Welcome to Rooted and Rising Healing. I'm your host, Hali Roderick, and this space is for women rebuilding after betrayal. Here we make sense of what happened, find truth again, and reconnect with who you really are beyond the pain. Whether you're staying, leaving, or still in the middle, your story matters. Together, we'll explore truth, clarity, and the quiet courage it takes to rise from the wreckage of what was into the wholeness of who you're becoming. You're safe to be here. In the messy middle, in the rebuilding, and in the rising. Let's begin. Thanks so much for being here today and joining me on this episode of the Rooted and Rising podcast. If I'm honest, there was a season after betrayal when kindness towards myself felt impossible. I could show empathy to everybody else, but not to me. And maybe you felt that too. I'm your host, Hali Roderick, and in today's episode, we're exploring what happens when we start to turn that kindness inward and how self-compassion can become one of the most powerful tools for healing after betrayal. So after betrayal, the world inside of us can feel unsafe, not just around us, but inside of us. We might question everything, including our worth, our intuition. But what if instead of pushing through or just shutting down, we would ask ourselves the question, what if I was kind to me? So today we're not talking about fixing, and I'm not talking about just positive thinking or thinking your way out of this. But what I'm inviting you to do is to consider offering ourselves the same warmth, the same protection, the same compassion that we would offer to someone else that we love who's hurting. Sometimes I like to ask myself, if this was my daughter or my sister or my best friend, how would I speak to her? What would I say to her? And that gives me a good indication of whether or not I'm speaking to myself in a way that is honoring where I'm at, or if I'm, in a sense, betraying myself again. So self-compassion and the way we speak to ourselves can sometimes even become the bridge that brings us back to safety within ourselves. So last week we talked a lot about how the nervous system is impacted, and we're going to build a little bit more on that today and bring in this piece of self-compassion and how it can be a bridge to start that healing process. So if we talk about the difference between self-pity and self-compassion, self-pity tends to spiral inward. It focuses on how unfair or how hopeless things feel, which it's not fair, right? We didn't ask to be in this place. We didn't, and that's a truth. And sometimes it feels really hopeless and helpless. And when we focus on those things, oftentimes we end up feeling smaller, more alone, more isolated. And self-compassion is acknowledging the suffering and offering our care without judgment. So it sounds more like, this hurts, and I'm here with myself in it. And this can open up the nervous system towards regulation and not collapse. So instead of the idea of what's wrong with me, try, of course I'm hurting. Anyone in my position would be hurting. I love that phrase, of course. I learned that from a fellow colleague that says, of course you're angry. Of course you're hurt. Of course you're upset. So if you want to adopt that phrase like I did, go ahead. Of course I'm hurting. Anyone in my position would be. Instead of thinking, man, I should be over this by now, try giving yourself the same compassion you would someone else you love. That healing takes time. And I'm learning to trust the process, and I'm in it, and I'm doing the work. So betrayal doesn't just shatter trust in another person, it fractures the trust within ourselves. Our mind scrambles to make sense of the trauma, and it often turns inward. If I had just been more, or if I would have done this, or maybe I should have known, if I would have taken this step, maybe this wouldn't happen. But betrayal is not a proof of your inadequacy or a proof of whether or not you're crazy. It's evidence of someone else's disconnection from their own integrity. And healing self-worth means separating our inherent value from their choices. So think about that again. Healing from betrayal includes separating your inherent worth from someone else's choices. So, what story did your pain start to tell you about your worth? Can you recognize that story as a survival attempt, as your brain's way of trying to make meaning in the chaos, not a reflection of truth? So, I would invite you to think about that. If you were your own best friend right now, what would you need to hear? Maybe something like, you've been carrying so much. Or maybe it's, you're allowed to rest. Or maybe it's, I can see how hard this has been. So think about that as you even consider saying that to yourself. Does that change the way that you feel? Our inner critic often comes up because it's trying to keep us safe, right? So it's trying to prevent rejection or failure. So that inner critic might sound again like, I should have seen it coming. I must not be enough. Maybe if I were different. And these ideas and this inner critic, they're not failures of your character. They are protective strategies, again, trying to make sense of the trauma. Because also, if this isn't actually true, but in our trauma brain, sometimes we think, if it is about me, well, then I can control that. I can change me and I can fix this, which again, we know isn't true because their betrayal had nothing to do with us, but our brain's trying to find a way to fix things and to move us out of pain. And so if it can make us the problem, which is not possible, but then we feel like we have some control of something. But I want you to recognize that for what it is. It's that inner critic searching for some sense of control. It's not actual truth. So, can you reach in and access your inner nurturer? A lot of women are nurturers by nature, and it's a lot of times easier to nurture to other people or give that to other people, and not as easy to give it to ourselves. So, your inner nurturer might sound something like, how could I have known what was happening when they were so good at deception, so good at manipulating, so good at gaslighting? How could I have known what I didn't know? And I was doing the best I could with the information and the knowledge that I had at that time. And I'm doing the same now. I still deserve love and safety. So both of these parts, the inner critic and the inner nurturer, can have a place. One's helping you survive, but the other one helps you heal. So if we can have compassion for our inner critic and move into that inner nurturer, Kristin Neff, if you don't know who she is, she's a well-known researcher in the field of self-compassion. And she talks about three elements of self-compassion that I want to highlight for a minute. The first one is self-kindness versus self-criticism. So self-kindness is treating yourself as you would treat someone else who you love, who is also hurting. So self-kindness sounds like, this is hard and I'm doing my best. It doesn't mean excusing poor behaviors from other people. It means that I'm refusing to add more harm to my own pain. So I'm refusing to betray myself by finding a way to criticize myself. Does that make sense? Think about that. So this self-kindness versus self-criticism makes me think about what I said a minute ago. How would I speak to my daughter, my sister, my best friend if she were in my situation? And that's a pretty good indicator of how you can move from self-criticism into self-kindness. The second element of self-compassion from Kristin Neff is common humanity versus isolation. Shame whispers, you're the only one. Nobody understands. What would people think about you if they knew what was going on? What does this say about you? Which those ideas are tempting us to go into isolation and think that we're all alone. But you're not all alone. There's this whole world of betrayal trauma that if you're just getting thrown into it, I hate that you're here. And I'm glad that you're here at the same time because there are lots of people who understand what you're going through and you need to find your tribe. And I'm happy to help you do that. And I'm going to provide some opportunities for that in the near future. So hang tight if you need a tribe. Every human experiences loss and pain and imperfection. And so remembering our common humanity This connects us back into the human family, into empathy, not into exile, not into isolation. Okay, so that's common humanity versus isolation. And then the third element she talks about is mindfulness over identification. And this is what I want to spend a few more minutes on. Mindfulness is noticing your pain without drowning in it. It's acknowledging it is connecting it to your body. It is having all the compassion in the world for the pain that you're feeling. And it's not suppressing it or over analyzing it. So instead of doing those things, suppressing or over analyzing, we'd notice, oh man, I'm feeling grief. I notice my chest is tightening, or I'm feeling betrayed. And I notice that there's a pit in my stomach that doesn't feel comfortable. Mindfulness keeps the emotion moving instead of letting it harden into our identity. So it's like we're observing it from an outside perspective and we're allowing it to move through rather than holding on and cementing it into the core of our identity. So we don't want to ignore it. We want to make room for it. We want to allow it to be there. We want to acknowledge it. We want to listen to it. We want to hear the message that it has for us. And we want to allow it to move through rather than hold on. So let's talk about how this connects with our nervous system, how self-compassion connects with our nervous system, because I think this is important, building on my last couple of episodes. When our body feels overthreatened, it activates fight, flight, or freeze. Fight can become self-criticism, so attacking yourself for what has happened. Flight can look like the isolation I was just talking about, withdrawing, maybe even overworking to escape the pain, or some other form of numbing mechanism to escape the pain. And freeze can appear as that rumination or that looping on the why without any movement. So again, fight becomes the self-criticism. We turn it inward, fighting against ourselves, betraying ourselves. Flight looks like isolation, which is the withdrawing or overcompensating or numbing in some way. And the freeze is that constant looping or rumination without any sort of movement. So self-compassion signals safety into our nervous system. When we can initiate self-compassion, it releases oxytocin, it lowers cortisol, and it shifts us out of that protection mode into connection mode. Even if you're not connecting with other people, you're connecting with yourself. And that's the most powerful connection we can start with. So your body can't heal while it feels like it's under attack, even from you. And so self-compassion, it's not indulgence. It's not just fluffy talk. It's not just positive thinking. It's regulation. It's nervous system regulation. So think about that. If our body can't heal while it's under attack, are we in our self-criticism attacking ourselves and keeping us from healing? And can we move into self-compassion to start finding that regulation? So there's something else that I love about how Kristin Neff talks about self-compassion. Sometimes self-compassion is soft and it's nurturing and it's soothing and it's allowing and it's mindful. And I love that. And we need that. But there's also what she calls fierce self-compassion. And the fierce self-compassion is the one that protects, it provides, it motivates change. Fierce self-compassion says, no more minimizing what happened. I'm going to honor the pain. I'm going to look at the reality of my truth. I'm going to take steps to protect myself. I deserve boundaries that keep me safe, is another form of self-compassion. Even though this is maybe a new behavior, this is me stepping out of an old pattern, I am going to initiate a boundary that keeps me safe. I'm going to honor myself. I'm not going to betray myself by allowing that boundary to be crossed or by allowing that right or that value to be violated. I can use my voice, even if it's shaky, even if it's uncertain, is a form of fierce self-compassion. So, that fierce mama bear that comes up, she's protective, she's powerful, she's rooted in truth. That's what fierce self-compassion feels like. And you probably likely know what mama bear feels like. in regards to someone else that you love, maybe a child or sister or best friend, like I've been referring to, that need to protect. And after betrayal, we need both for ourselves. We need the tender compassion to comfort our pain, and we need the fierce compassion to reclaim our power. So I would encourage you to think about, where do you need some tender self-compassion, and where might your situation be asking for some fierce self-compassion? Every time you silence your truth, you minimize your needs, or you talk harshly to yourself, in a sense, that's a form of self-betrayal. And I got to this point where I was like, you know what? Other people have betrayed me. Other people that I love and thought I could trust have betrayed me. And dang it, I'm not going to betray myself anymore. So every time you choose honesty, gentleness, or a boundary, that's self-loyalty. That's fierce self-compassion. Healing means remembering that I will not abandon me. So I hope that you can connect with that. And if it's hard for you to connect with that, I hope it gives you something to think about, because you deserve the mama bear protection as well. You can do it in a connected but protected way. And you'll hear me talk about that a lot, connected but protected, that you can see and you care about other people, and you also have a right to have boundaries. So this week, I would encourage you to think about one act of compassion, either one tender or one fierce, or if you're feeling brave and courageous and ready, one of each. Some examples of tender self-compassion might be just taking a moment, wrap yourself in a blanket, a weighted blanket if you have one, and just remind yourself that right here, right now in my body, I'm safe. I create my own safety. It might be writing a note to your hurting heart. It might be journaling out the pain that you're feeling, getting it out of your head onto paper so you can see it differently and you can validate it. Some examples of fierce self-compassion might be saying no to something that's draining your energy. It might mean setting a boundary that protects your time for healing. That might mean your time in the morning for self-reflection and journaling and meditating or nervous system regulation. That might mean protecting your time to exercise. That might mean protecting your time to meet with a professional, whatever that is. But whatever it is, let it be one small act that says this week that I choose me. And I would just remind you that self-compassion is not a luxury, and it's not self-indulgent. It's medicine. It's the gentle hand of ourselves that steadies you and allows you to make change and step into your power. You're not weak for needing care. You're actually really wise for offering it to yourself and taking something that you have control of into your own hands. So if this episode met you in your healing today, please share it with another woman who might need a reminder that she's not alone. Thank you for being here. I hope to walk this rising path with you, rooted in truth and rising in your power. See you next week. Thank you for being here with me inside Rooted in Rising Healing. Remember, healing isn't a destination. It's a returning to your truth, to your voice, to the woman you were always meant to be. You have the power to rise at your own pace, in your own way. And when it feels hard, just come back to your breath and remind yourself, still I rise. If this episode spoke to you, I'd love if you shared it with another sister on the journey. And until next time, stay rooted, stay rising. You've got this.